The earliest building you can see is the church itself, which was probably built around 1500. Later, the ground floor of the domestic range was added, forming a courtyard area between it and the church. Following the burning of the building in 1584, they seem to have lain derelict for some years. By 1621, however, the site had been refurbished by Randall McDonnell, the first Earl of Antrim. The McDonnell vault, with the private family chapel above, was built as part of these works. The church would have been divided into two sections, probably separated by a wooden screen. The main body of the building, known as the nave, was used by lay people, non-clergy members, while the east end of the church, the chancel, was used by the friars. The main entry to the church for the lay people was by the west door, though the wall which contained it is no longer standing. The chancel contained the altar, the base of which can be seen under the damaged but still impressive east window, which would have flooded the altar with light. The relieving arches above the east window indicate that a larger window was once in place here. Remains of this current window show us that it must have been beautifully ornate tracery in the late Irish Gothic style. On the outside face of the east wall, beside the window, you can see some weathered carved decoration. Tradition has it that the remains of the famous sortie boy McDonnell are interred here. On the north side of the chancel is a door leading to a passage to the domestic range. From this passage, another doorway leads into a small chamber which probably functioned as the sacristy for the storage of vestments, books and other equipment. The room has two hatches which open into a second larger room. In the courtyard was the cloistered or covered walkway. There are now no visible remains of this cloister at all, suggesting it was a wooden structure, but the line of the lean-to roof is still visible on the north wall of the church, as are the projecting stones or corbels which supported the roof timbers. The semi-subterranean McDonnell vault, which has now been sealed off, contains the remains of members of the McDonnell family. The earliest identifiable coffin is that of Randall McDonnell, the Earl, who died in 1682. A grand tomb of around 1630 marks the grave of another prominent local family, the McNaughtons. The name Bonamargy comes from the Irish Bonamarg, which means the foot of the Margy, the river beside which the friary was built around 1500 AD. Tradition has it that Bonamargy was founded by Rory MacQuillan, the chief of the powerful family who controlled the area around that time. Bonamargy was one of 43 friaries of the Third Order of Franciscans regular that was established in Ireland between the 1420s and the dissolution of the monasteries in 1536. The friars followed a simple communal life, helping parish clergy with pastoral work and education, and the simple buildings constructed by the order reflect this lifestyle. Bonamargy continued to function after the dissolution of the monasteries. It came into the possession of the McDonnells of Antrim in 1558, following sortie boy McDonnell's victory over the MacQuillans. In 1584, the church, which had a thatch roof, was burnt in an attack by Scottish members of the McDonnell clan on English troops quartered here, and the friary was abandoned for some years. By the 1620s, however, it was repaired, probably with funding from Randall McDonnell, the first Earl of Antrim, and the Franciscans used it as a base for missionary work to promote the Catholic faith in Scotland. During this period, Bonamargy almost certainly functioned as the local parish church as well, continuing as a place of worship until at least the 1720s, and possibly as late as the 1770s. The graveyard, however, continued to be used for burials until modern times. The gatehouse which we're walking through now, medieval monasteries and friaries were usually surrounded by an enclosure, often formed by an earthen bank. You can still see the low remains of this original boundary beside the gatehouse running through the graveyard, which is extended all round it. This small two-storey gatehouse, probably dating from 1620s, would have been where people entered and left the friary. From here you get a good view of the friary itself, the domestic range on the right, where the friars lived and worked, the gable of the church with its tall, elegant window. The Black Nun is said to have died on the stairs in East Range and apparently still haunts here. Local legends tell of monastic treasure being buried here. Only one clue to the location of the treasure remains. On the night of its concealment, a candle was placed in the eastern window of this friary, and the treasure was buried at the furthest limit to which the rays of the light extended. Many people have searched for the treasure over the centuries, but with no success. One of the most famous inhabitants of Bonamargy in the 17th century was Julia MacQuillan, known locally as the Black Nun. Dark Julia was a recluse and prophetess, most of her predictions telling of the coming of some startling and calamitous event. She is said to have died on the stairs in the East Range and apparently haunts them still. As a sign of humility, she requested to be buried at the west door, and her grave is believed to be marked by the unusual disc-headed stone cross which still stands here today with a hole in it. After the buildings were finally abandoned in the 18th century, the site continued to be used for burials, and there are many interesting gravestones. Since Third Order Franciscan friaries commonly had their cloisters at the north, the favoured position for the cemetery was south of the church. This is probably where the oldest graves are located. There are a number of graves from the First and Second World Wars with the distinctive headstones in the graveyard, including seamen lost on the HMS Victor in 1915 and HMS Raccoon in 1918.